One of my favorite questions is when people ask me, if you hate this system so much, what are you suggesting as an alternative? And I do have an answer to that. But first, I think I should clear up what I mean by certain terms, because especially in the US, there's a great confusion as to what the differences between socialism and communism, and honestly, most Americans don't even know what those terms mean, and generally think of politics in terms of the Democrats and Republicans, which are far right or center right ideologies that don't even include things like socialism. We don't have a mainstream socialist party in the US. We haven't for many years, unfortunately, and that is by design. So you may think you know what these things mean, but if you don't have a very strong opinion on the Kronstadt Rebellion, I would suggest continuing to listen. But if you do have an opinion on Kronstadt, please tell me what it is, and you could skip to this point. So, very briefly, capitalism is a system where the means of production are privately owned. There are two types of property. We have personal property and private property. Personal property is just the things you own, everyday things like your clothing, your car, your house or apartment, the things you use and need to survive. Socialists do not want to seize your personal property. And then there's private property, a factory, or an entire apartment building. It's things that can be utilized to exploit the poor for profit, basically, either by being a landlord, rent-seeking behavior where you're exploiting the fact that you own property and they don't, and you're making money off of that. They make money just based on their ownership of the property or the means of production, and a factory is a means of production. This is a parasitic way of earning because you're not contributing anything. You're just using the fact that you are more wealthy and own property to make more money. Now, I understand that some landlords also serve as property managers where they do work that helps maintain the apartment in some way. No one's saying that a landlord that does upkeep on an apartment does not deserve compensation for that work. They do. They do not deserve rent, especially when we have a class of people that is so obscenely wealthy, and the way they earn that wealth is actually keeping people homeless or keeping people in poverty. It's wrong that people live in such obscene luxury and have so much wealth, while others suffer, starve, and die for lack of the basics. Every hour of every day, 700 children die because of poverty. These are easily preventable deaths because in the modern world, there is no reason for these children to die. We produce more than enough to feed everybody. We produce more than enough to make sure everyone has clean water and medicine. The reason they don't have that is simply because of poverty. So socialism is an economic system where the means of production are democratically controlled. They are owned by the workers, and production is based on human need, whereas capitalism is a system where the means of production are privately owned, and production is based on profit rather than human need. And one argument against necessities being privatized is that means because capitalism always seeks profit, only people who are profitable to serve will have those necessities. Even if they have all the money in the world to spend on it, if it is not profitable to serve them, they will not be served. So that's the difference between socialism and capitalism. Now, what's communism? Communism is a classless, stateless society. So currently we live in a system of, in theory, political democracy and economic dictatorship. Now, I say in theory political democracy because in practice, if you're not one of the parties of capitalism, you generally can't get on the ballot, and it's very difficult to get elected, especially for any higher office. So if you skipped ahead, welcome back. So what would a socialist society look like? It would be one where you're not working paycheck to paycheck just to make ends meet. You would have free time, and you would have the basics of survival at bare minimum, guaranteed. If you think this isn't affordable, recall that we are spending $1 billion a day to go to war with Iran. Currently, almost half of our discretionary spending goes to current or former wars. This is a pointless war. This is a war of imperialism. And this is what you get when you have a government that's run by people who profit from wars. Americans don't want this war. Most Americans don't even know what it's about. Socialism means that you would have a say in your workplace. Right now, especially if you are employed in the private sector, you pretty much work in a dictatorship. Whatever the people in power, the people who own the company say goes, and that's just how it is. Whatever they want you to produce, that's what you do. And of course, they are limited by a number of labor laws, which we fought very hard to get. But increasingly, they can skirt those, and when they do break them, it's often hard to get justice because the current system, pretty much every system of government, was designed to and serves the wealthy and powerful. That's what's unique about socialism. It's taking away the means that the elite have to control and exploit us. If they do not have the means of production, they do not have the means to concentrate wealth and power. Ultimately, people would have more free time and work less. We currently have so many people who are unemployed or underemployed or rotting away in prison for drug crimes. When keeping people in prison is profitable, of course we're going to have a huge prison population. The US has more people in prison, not just per capita, but total. The claim that capitalism is efficient, it's just not true. It's only efficient to the extent that efficiency makes the company more profitable. It is incredibly inefficient in every other regard. So what would work look like? Well, there'd be a lot of jobs that would become obsolete. Bullshit jobs. No advertising except for public service announcement. No marketing. Scientists could work on drugs that actually are meaningful to our health rather than developing drugs that are designed just to extend patent life. We would fund and spend money on and invest in things that actually matter to us. And if you look at what the US government does, it really has nothing to do with what people actually want. We spend money on wars and giving huge handouts to billionaires and corporations. Americans do not support massive corporate bailouts. And truth be told, if companies are too big to fail, then they should be nationalized. If companies need bailouts, then the control should go to the workers. And a benefit of socialism is that automation is not a threat anymore. It actually is something that benefits us all, because under capitalism, it's something that meant unemployment and more profits to the wealthy. But under socialism, it would mean less work for all of us. AI has been used to replace very human jobs, which is the opposite of what we should be doing. We should be using AI to automate the really menial and repetitive jobs that no one wants to do, and we should have humans doing the artistic work, the kind of work that people actually want to do. Because the idea is, and I know this sounds very radical, is that people could choose to work, but don't have to. And the fact of the matter is, most people, given the choice, whether to work or not, they would do something productive. They wouldn't just sit around all day and play video games. We have a very deep-seated need to create and to help others and to explore the world and to do something productive. So ultimately, socialism means more freedom, more democratic control, less wealth inequality, and less poverty. Obviously, it means less billionaires. I don't think we should praise people who are super wealthy, because we know that they got that wealth by exploiting others for profit. And that's what profit is. It's the unpaid labor of their employees. They're taking some of the labor value that those employees are putting in and stealing it in the form of profit. And when we're talking about stealing, wage theft is the largest form of theft by far. All other forms of theft combined barely can touch it. Capitalism rewards the worst type of people. Socialism would reward compassion and generosity and creativity, not selfishness. I think a big reason a lot of us feel so empty, like we don't have a purpose, is because our primary effect on the world is just enriching someone who doesn't need any more money, rather than helping others or creating something beautiful or doing what we want with our lives. We don't have that choice as wage workers, and under socialism we would have that choice. So many of you may be thinking that it is impossible to achieve change, and we'll never cease the means of production, we'll never change anything, and I'm sure this is what many people have thought over the centuries. I'm sure this is what abolitionists thought way back when, but obviously things do change, and the way things change for workers has always been the same. It isn't that the owning class suddenly gains a conscience and decides that we don't want child labor anymore or we want safe workplaces. No, it's always been working people banding it together and fighting, sometimes literally fighting, pitched battles against either the police or the National Guard or the strikebreakers. We fought for every single win we've had, whether it's overtime pay or safe workplaces, whatever it is, we had to fight. It didn't come from politicians, it came from organized labor. And also, it could come from an actual socialist party. The Democrats are always going to be a party of capitalism, especially when they're funded by the capitalist class. They are not going to be winning these battles for us. They may promise these things in order to get our votes, but when time comes, you can see that whenever they've actually controlled Congress and had the presidency, they always stall on everything. They have the blue dog Democrats come out and sabotage everything. It's because they don't want to pass this stuff. And rank and file Democrats may and probably do honestly believe in this stuff, though they'll always tell us that we're going way too far, and ultimately they just want to reform capitalism. They don't actually want economic democracy or socialism. But looking at the platform from the original Socialist Party of America back in 1901. If you look at their demands, they actually achieved a lot of them. And at the time, these were very radical demands. We're still fighting to keep a lot of these things, but their demands were universal suffrage, barring child labor, free public education for all, unemployment and social security benefits, and the creation of a public health department, a labor department, a department to make workplaces safe, and the establishment of what would become the Environmental Protection Agency. These were all things that they demanded and probably didn't think they would see in their lifetime, but organized labor fought to achieve all this. And having a strong socialist party that is not going to capitulate to the ruling class is very helpful with that. We don't have that right now. We don't really have a lot of strong militant mass labor unions either. So that's what we need to do. We need to build those two things, and we need to spread class consciousness so people understand that they have a lot more in common with the undocumented immigrants that are being demonized, or the trans people, or women, whoever they're spreading anger about. And that's one reason I talk about feminism a lot, is because men are being encouraged to see this as a gender war rather than a class war, and that's really what we're up against. The working class is not going to be emancipated by the goodwill of those with all the wealth and power. So that's an introduction. Obviously, there's a lot more to this, but I can only make these so long, and I don't want to bore y'all. So, if there's other things you want to hear about, or if you have any ideas or feedback, or you disagree, let me know in the comments.